Can you talk about being a black man in a predominantly white field?
We as black men are always thinking like, oh, are they thinking about, my facial hair? Are they thinking about how I am with their child? Instead of like what happened in the session. There's a lot of old school teachings. I mean, I'll just say a lot of old heads that are like, no, this is what has worked in the past, but they're not shifting with the kids. They're not shifting their mentality with their clients.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back.
Welcome.
Wow. It's been a few months since we've been in the studio here in Atlanta.
Yes.
It's been quite a journey. I'm joined by my fantastic co-host, Joseph Adams, Darius Cooper. You guys know I'm Jerron Trotman. Fellas, we have been on a tear lately, and we have an amazing guest with us here.
Yes, we do.
I want to just give you a quick shout out. We have Kevin here. Most of you guys know him as the Singing SLP on Instagram, TikTok. The guy has a YouTube page. It's going crazy. So just harmonizing the words of music and speech therapy. So, fellas, let's take some time really fast and welcome to the show.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Let's just start out really quickly here. Let's get right into it. I know you are doing a lot of things in terms of music and speech and sensory-friendly haircuts. Could you just quickly tell us about your journey, who you are, what drives you, and everything in between?
Born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah, the roots, and
Love it.
I mean, can't navigate worth anything, so always using Google Maps. But but yeah, so I started off in healthcare, love the human body, trying to follow my sister in her footsteps with PT. And one day I was like, man, I don't want to go back to school, try to get the grades that like PT is requiring. So I was like, God, I need some help, and I took a year off. So, for the listener out there that is like struggling, wanting to keep going, like doing the classes, just doing filler work, take a break. Like I had to recenter myself, and I just had a year where I was just asking God, trying to figure out what was the next step. So skip ahead, lo and behold, I had a couple mentors that were speech therapists, and I just kept hearing that word, and I've never heard of speech therapy before. And so I was like curious, asked for some mentorship, shout out to speech therapist, shout out Chelsea. And it was cool because she is a Black speech therapist. And again, in this field, you are around a lot of white females. So like to have that mentorship, shadow her, it was like night and day. I had a kid who I was shadowing, and she was autistic, and she didn't have a lot of trust in men. She had been abused emotionally. So it had been a while since she had like actually talked to a male figure. So she comes in the room, speech therapist tells me just to sit in the background, do my thing, take notes. And towards the end of the session, she's like, hey, so-and-so, you have someone else in the room. And she was facing away from me. And she was like, yeah. And she wasn't even looking my way. But I noticed she had like a Marvel shirt on. And at the time it was, I think Endgame coming out. And I was like, hey, you like Marvel? You like superheroes? And we got to talking. And finally she opened up, talked to me. So they left, and the speech therapist talked to her mom. And she came back 10 minutes later and was like, so sorry that took forever, but I talked to mom, told her what happened, and fellas, she told me that was the first time she's talked to like a male figure in 2 years, from that emotional past. So like right then and there, I was like, that's it.
That was that moment.
This is
So I want to ask you, right? I want to touch on that point you said about you taking a break. A lot of times people take that break and it's hard to go back. So how did you and what motivated you to go back, taking that year off?
That's a good question. I think I think when I was trying to just keep going and put in filler work, retake those classes, you kind of hit a kind of monotonous stage. In grad school, and I mean, even in life right now, you know, sometimes through the week, it's like, all right, let's just get, you know, these bills. I mean, like, that's just the mentality. There's no excitement. It's just like, let's go about it. But I think there was a moment in time where, like, getting the bills, just like checking it off, I was like, I don't want to do that. So I don't want to rush that process. Let me like actually sit down because I'm very type A. I have to have organization. I have to have things go in a certain manner. So I think when it was going away from that, my organization, I had to just like reroute that plan and just like go through like, all right, if this doesn't work, let me look at plan B, plan C. And to your point, I think I did a lot of career aptitude tests. And as cheesy as they are, like it does give you a lot of insight on who you are as a person. Are you a planner? Like, would you be good in healthcare? Would you be good as a chef? What have you? But yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it definitely is important to center yourself and, you know, find what is going to work for you and not just rush into that.
We talk about mentorship, and we just talk about just how important that is. I think as we entered the field of ABA, I know me, I had my long-term mentor. He told me about the field. He's been a BCBA since 2006, but having that day-to-day person, man, like how was that? Like, because everybody's supervision experience, getting those hours, man, it's not the same.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that.
Yeah. Mentorship, I always tell people, younger people, that mentorship is.
I'm just messing with you.
But yeah, I tell them that mentorship is so important. You know, when I was going through the field, when I was going through undergrad, I mean, I didn't have much direction. Obviously, I took that year off, but that my mentors, you know, have been able to set foot and tell me what their insight is from the outside looking in. And you as a person, as an ABA therapist, as a speech therapist, like we see what we're doing and we're our biggest critics. Like, of course, we'll be like, all right, that was a pretty good day. You know, I challenged the kid, but you know, you have your mentor who can hone in on, you know, some of your weaknesses.
Yes.
And like really hone in on those weaknesses. When we call out our weaknesses, we're like, all right, I'll work on that. That's probably something not too big, but I mean, that's probably bigger in the grand scheme of things. So mentors are able to challenge you in ways, in a loving way, you know, because when we receive criticism, like, I mean, I'll be honest, I get salty. I'm like, I did everything right. So I did. I mean, it's human. We're human.
No,
you know. So
definitely are human.
yeah, having that mentorship is so important. To be called out and challenged in ways that are just gonna better yourself.
Yeah, and Joe, I appreciate that you asked that question. I think all of us can agree that mentorship is something that we talk about a lot on this show and the power of it. Kevin, you brought up, you know, you're in a field dominated by white women, and so are we. You know, so we've been really trying to encourage people. We can have mentorship from like-minded individuals, people that look like you. It doesn't always happen, but if you can, I feel like you will have a better experience with somebody who's competent and can relate to some of your experiences, right? So I appreciate you sharing that. I want to transition here, now that we've kind of talked about how you got into the field and about the creativity. The Singing SLP. Now, we've seen you on Instagram. We've seen you all over doing your thing, man. Like, honestly, I admire it. I'm glad that we're able to link up here because the way in which you do it, Joseph spoke about the light that you have. It is a very unique way of touching people and reaching people. So first start off and tell us how the hell did that name even come about? The Singing SLP. Give us the story behind that and just discuss how social media kind of amplified that you're reaching, how you've been able to connect with others.
No, I appreciate that. So it started off in grad school. I had this externship. This client was, she had aphasia, and if you don't know what aphasia is, it is a brain injury, and people either lose their way to talk. So they may be slow to talk or their understanding of language. She was slow to talk. She had a lot of understanding. And at the end of the session, I had my supervisor with me. I noticed that she had like Frank Sinatra, like all these musical talents up. And I asked her, I was like, oh man, so you know Frank. Acting like I know Frank. She was slow with it. She was like, yeah, yeah. And I can't remember what we were working on, just like labeling simple phrases. And so there's a speech term and or strategy, and it's called melodic intonation therapy. So it's utilizing music. And at that time when I was in under or grad school, I mean, like I knew of it, but I wasn't like applying it. And so I told her, "Hey, so what's your favorite Frank Sinatra song?" And she was like, "I like the LOV one." And I was like, "Oh, Love." And I was like, "Bet, let's let's do it." So started singing the song, and like we just transformed it into what she was doing and what she was reading. I was like, L is for language therapy, and just went with it. So my supervisor was like, man, you should be like a singing SLP or something. So like that first popped up, and I was like, all right, that's funny, that's cool. Then another time, this was the second time, I was like, all right, I got to do something about this. My classmates asked me to put on a performance because I love entertaining. I mean, y'all see, I just love entertaining and making people smile. So they asked me to like put on a show for these older patients, and I was like, all right, what can I do? And one of them loved MJ, and I was like, bet again, y'all are just bringing out all the musical talents. So I just put on an MJ talent show and was dancing, singing, and at the very end, one of the guys was like, "You should be a singing like therapist or something." When I graduated, I was like, "Man, let me apply that." Like I know that someone needs these resources. So it started off slow. I would get like one like on a post. And I'm like, God, again, what do I do here? Yeah. But I mean, just getting the steady stream of DMs of grad school students, again, of Black therapists that are like, man, I'm in grad school, and like to see you do therapy here and there, it's like, brighten my spirits, because grad school is hard. I mean, y'all know, like it's hard. They push us through, a lot of things. So, yeah, anyway, that's just the continued drive to be that source for a lot of kids that need, a mentor. Yeah. They don't have anyone that looks like us. You go to grad school out in Southwest Virginia where I went to, there's literally no one that looks like us. So to have someone on social media provide that, I just keep, remembering that. And yeah, hope to continue to educate and provide these resources.
I love that. You talk about music. I mean, and music really makes the world go round. I pride myself on having, you were saying this before off air about I'm listening to pretty much everything. I'm so eclectic when it comes to music, but it really can, like sports, it can connect people. So I just love to see what you're doing and how you're connecting people. So definitely keep up the good work. You're listening to Beyond the Science. We're back in studios here, live in Atlanta, Georgia. This episode is brought to you by Excellence Noir. All right, Excellence Noir have a commitment to empowering children with ASD to reach their full potential, fostering independence, social skills, and overall quality of life. If you want to learn more about Excellence Noir, please visit excellencenoiraba.com. Shout out to Excellence Noir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, listen, man, I know you kind of connected him, Kevin, with us, and all the stuff that you're doing. Just kind of talk about, what you've been seeing this brother doing on social media from there.
So we actually probably connected about a year ago.
Yeah.
I just loved what he was doing, man. I actually want to say the first time I kind of saw you was on the news.
Yeah.
So, with Excellence Noir, the goal essentially is to get back to the community as many ways as possible. So, we'll get more into it in the episode, but you focus on haircuts for children on the spectrum and neurodiverse children. And I thought that was just so different and amazing. And from our first conversation, man, you always just had this genuine spirit about you. For what you were doing, the way you give back in different creative spaces. And then I feel like there's a part of you that's vulnerable that we appreciate.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
You know, the way that you do go on your posts and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. It's okay. You know, the way you allow people to reach out and talk to you. So I definitely just want to give thanks to you in that aspect, man.
Yeah, and you be active in those comments too, man. Would that be you commenting back? You got a social media manager.
No, that's
right.
That's me. That's me.
It takes time though to comment on these people. Yeah, you edit your stuff too.
Edit, haircut.
Wow.
I'm telling you.
Wait, hold on, y'all. Let's just go ahead and clap it up for this
appreciate
brother real quick, man. I love that. You're doing big things. Coop, you spoke about, and I love this. I want you to speak about this. You spoke about his creativity and that it doesn't just stop with speech therapy. You talked about him giving haircuts to kids with intellectual development disabilities. I want to talk about your work as a sensory-friendly barber.
Yeah.
All right. So, what inspired you? So, I don't know a lot of people doing. So, you're singing SLP, and now you cutting kids' hair. You editor. You come. Talk to us about the sensory-friendly barber. What started that? How it's going for you? And tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So that again just kind of landed in my lap. I had a client that I was in the speech session and mom was talking aloud. She had come in to the therapy session and she was like, man, I got to cut his hair. And I was like, what, why is it such a bad thing? And we start talking and she's like, man, Kevin, it takes like 4 hours. And I'm like, what? 4 hours? And it's a whole family thing. And back at the time, this was 2 years ago, I had just finished grad school. I was in our clinical externship and, you know, being supervised, but I'm pretty much on my own, but still very new to speech. So let alone, you know, sensory. And I was like, well, I cut my own hair. Do you want to try it out? Like maybe we can just see
This
something.
is your first time cutting hair?
First time. And granted, I've cut, you know, my cousins. My family, yeah, but like not someone that has, you know, sensory needs. And she was like, you sure? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, we tried it out and I like from every haircut it's changed, you know. I read what they need. And I've started to learn even from that first haircut, like what I like. You know, I like to take breaks when I'm cutting my hair. I like to make sure hair doesn't fall on me. And even though like we can all agree it's relaxing to get back on the barber chair and you know, I fall asleep.
I be knocked out.
Some kids, they're just like, nah, they're not
it's a stressful moment.
So like having that and just like thinking about it without the sensory strategies, went into it. Occupational therapist helped me out before, and just we went on the swing. But fellas, it took from 4 hours to we knocked it down to 45 minutes. And so like we took breaks. I mean, like it was incredible. Again, one of those like aha moments.
I got some questions.
And I was like, all right, let's make this a thing. And word got around. I was in Johns Creek, Georgia. Word got around and like it just kind of blossomed from there where I travel, do home haircuts. Some people come to the clinic, but like, it's just been like a training experience along the way. No like sit down training. It's just been like, hey, what works for your kid here? What works for So it's been cool.
So what I've heard is that you assess. Not only do you assess, you collaborate with OT with those proprioception needs, those vestibular needs, and then you go and you actually kind of see those sensory needs. So, right, I know we're going to get to it where we kind of mix the fields here, but man, just doing that assessment, like, how is that? Like, are you doing it in the moment? Are you looking like a little biopsychosocial? Are you kind of getting some input from the parents? Like, talk to us about that because you kind of have to have some type of learning history with the kid though, like you know, like so you have to know what the kid likes, what the kid doesn't like, what you know this going on because you don't want to, you know, promote a behavior in that moment, right? So talk to us about that.
So early on when I would get texts, there wasn't like a booking way. It was just like, hey, I know this guy, and some people would just contact me. So I didn't really think about it beforehand, and I would just be like, all right, come to the clinic, and without any history. And yeah, kids were just running wild. And I was like,
You know how many kids want to get their haircut?
Stop the intake process, right?
So first couple times, like it was a learning process, but now I've gotten into the groove of things where they'll email me, they'll text me, and like without even any prompting, I'll just be like, tell me what works. Do they accept water? Like what water play? Do they even let you touch their hair? Some parents, like for real, like they can't even touch their child's hair.
No, you can't.
And I mean, fellas, like their hair will be on like near their back. So it like there's no haircuts, there's no talking about haircuts. So yeah, getting those inputs, getting all that intake information has been super important. And then when I get that, like what works, maybe we use scissors, then yeah, I'll talk with OT and see like, all right, can I use a sensory brush? What do you think here? Because it's out of my scope. Like they know best on like what's gonna work. But again, I've taken a lot of things that I've used as a speech therapist, and it's like, okay, we can do pretend play. You know, let's use your favorite toy and do a pretend haircut. And I've seen in haircuts where like the child's demeanor will completely change, where it's a Woody doll. And yeah, I'm cutting his hair and it's like, oh man, Woody needs a haircut. Now it's your turn. And they'll be like, okay. You know, so it's cool. Yeah, and then in regard to ABA, like reaching out to them and seeing what they've been working on and talking about with haircuts on the device, and like having them where I'll program and say like, hey, can you talk about haircuts all this week in preparation, even when the child's like, no haircut, no haircut. Had a kid yesterday, actually, he was like, no haircut, no haircut. ABA, you know, they helped me facilitate that conversation. No joke, the next day he said, I was like, no, there's no more haircuts. We're done. We already did it. He said, yes, haircut, yes, haircut. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like,
I love that, man. No,
it's game changing.
That's amazing. Wow. Okay, I heard so much from what you just gave us. You're really dropping some of the gems. I'm thinking about even just ABA, because a lot of people know, our listeners are listening right now, you know, ABA, we have all this terminology and stuff like that, but a lot of people are doing these techniques already, right? So even when I was listening to you, I heard intake process, I heard priming, I heard shaping, I heard differential reinforcement, I heard non-contingent reinforcement, I heard modeling. But one of the big things that I heard that I really want to get to is you talked about collaboration. You talked about collaborating with other OTs and all that. And collaboration is something, and I know we want to definitely talk about today. You talk about the overlap between speech and ABA, and you talked about OT. Let's dive into particularly SLP and ABA. I feel like you have these two interdisciplinaries, and you know we don't talk about collaborating enough. Some of us do, and I also think there's some tension too. Some overlap, but there's also some great things that can come about. So can you just talk to us about collaboration, not even just with that, but just in general? How our fields can work together to be more effective for our clients to benefit from that.
Yeah, I think that when you talk about the tension, there's a lot of old school teachings, like a lot of research. I mean, I'll just say a lot of old heads are like, no, this is what has worked in the past, but they're not shifting with the kid. They're not shifting their mentality with their clients. And so what I mean by that is, you know, in grad school, you always hear like, oh, ABA, and it's like, people are like, oh. It's like, why is that? It's the old research. And I mean, I collaborate with our ABA clinic like right beside us. And it's a lot of play-based. I mean, things are changing, they're shifting to fit the client's needs. That's the biggest thing. And the research is, yeah, it's good, but that was good 20 years ago. You know, our kids are not 20 years old. They're, you know, 5, 6, and now they have tablets. Now they have, you know, behaviors based on the tablets.
You know
what I mean? And it's like, we can't use that research. It's outdated. So sorry, I just had to say that piece because
I'm happy you said it. I'm happy you said it.
Are like, oh man, ABA, but I mean, y'all have done such a great job with, you know, help navigating those behaviors. that I know I can't, help facilitate on my own because they're running wild.
Yeah.
And then just to reinforce that back home, if families are like, oh, well, my speech therapist said that behavior is fine, like we're just working on communication.
Yeah.
Well, that behavior is communication, so we need ABA therapists.
So I have a question, right?
Yeah.
So for the people that would say that, ABA is given 40 hours a week, we touch on that speech stuff. Is speech necessary? What would you say?
Is speech necessary?
Because there are a lot of ABA principles that touch on speech stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree.
And sometimes, as far as insurance and quality, right, that hour comparison is not even related. Like, they'll give speech 2 hours a week, but they'll give ABA 40 hours a week. So what would you say to those people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, yeah, speech is still needed. And given the ratios 2 to 40, whatever it may be, speech is communication. And when we talk about collaboration, like it's almost like food. Like, yeah, I love food. So, it's like, right. It's like your grandma's dressing. You can have, my mom makes a great dressing. You can have it and it'll be good, but it's not going to be good without the sage. Like, you need the sage, and the sage isn't going to be good without the dressing. That would be terrible, actually. To eat straight sage. So yeah, I would tell the listener that speech therapy is just as important as ABA therapy. There's tension, but like I think we're getting it back into that, that mellow field where we can both just help each other out. And I think about the 40 hours versus the 2. Like, I tell my ABA therapist what we're working on, following directions, and how we can apply that on the device. A lot of ABA therapists come out to me and ask me, hey, how do I program this on the device? So there's always going to be ways that we can work together.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's always, there's always those ways we can work together, You spoke about, I just want to rewind a little bit about the learning history of maybe people who've been in the field long and are maybe adapting and evolving. And in my journey, really pairing myself with these therapists, because they have a certain way of doing things that, they kind of tenure, So I think having that collaborative spirit for those who are listening right now is definitely the way to go. Coop asked the question about ABA versus speech and the collaboration process. Could you dive a little bit deeper for our listeners about the differences between SLP and ABA, so the implementation of it? I know that, Coop, you kind of said they kind of coincide with, the communication, but can you speak about the differences, or at least speak to what exactly SLPs do, and from your experience with ABA, how that may be different from ABA?
Yeah. So going out of grad school, we had the mentality that like, oh, ABA, y'all sit down and it's like just reinforcement here.
Give us some ABA jokes. I mean, y'all be joking on us.
Well, y'all, hey, I was on the background. I was just like, what?
He's like, it's 3-1 right now. Like, nah, yeah, I'm cool with them. Like, what you was really saying now, right? Like,
yeah, I just thought that, it would. I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was just, what families took their kids to. And so I really didn't get much involvement until this past year where, like I said, the clinic is right next door. And we have some great therapists that are play-based, and they've been able to give me some insight on what y'all do. But I think the difference, the contrast between the two to come together and help this child out is the beauty behind it. So with speech therapy, we work on a lot of communication, like whatever it may be. That's I always use the device, AAC device, verbal language. If I have a nonverbal or non-speaking child, we're working on gestures. We're working on anything like functional language. That's my main goal. When I tell families, I don't want to see y'all. Like my main goal is to get y'all out the
Yeah,
door.
phase
I want
two.
you to be functional.
Yeah.
And that like mindset, I think is shifting. Like I talked about with a lot of speech therapists and ABA therapists. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think ABA just gets a bad rap, but y'all are trying to get them out the door. Like y'all are trying to create functional goals so that they can succeed in society. And so when I think about speech therapy and how fallen directions, in my session is going to be like, hey, spatial concepts, like, all right, put the red block on top of the door or whatever. Same thing can be said with y'all with fallen directions, to reduce that behavior. We all have that goal of like, when you get out those doors, you got to listen to mom and dad because you don't want to get hurt by so yeah, I think there's a beauty in the contrast, but I mean it's just so important that we all work together.
Yeah.
100%. This is a call to action for all my BCBAs, all my ABA, everybody. We're sitting here talking about this collaboration. And so we're encouraging our listeners, everybody listening, to make sure that you are collaborating. This isn't versus, you know what I mean? Versus we want to collaborate at the benefit of the child, the client, who you may be working with. So that's our call to action for our collaboration segment. All right. Listening to Beyond the Science. We are live here in Atlanta, Georgia. We're here with the Singing SLP. Kevin's dropping some dimes with us. We appreciate you being here, with us today.
So Kevin, real quick, I'm 4. I just left your clinic. I'm going to school.
Okay.
How can some of your SLP goals drive my first IEP?
I would definitely talk to family. And again, it kind of goes back to the collaboration. So I'm reaching out to the school-based therapists, asking them, what are we doing to help this child, this 4-year-old, succeed in the classroom? And not only is collaboration important, but it can deter the child if we're not collaborating. So say the school-based speech therapist is working on let's go back to the fallen directions goal. Fallen directions, 2-step, sequences, so that, they can be able to listen to mom and dad. But then I've been working on, 4-step sequences. I've been working on, recall or whatever. We're almost going backwards, right? So, and that's not to call anyone out, but it's just to say that what you're working on doesn't align with what I'm working on. And, the child could get confused, like, all right, this is super easy for me right now, but it's hard when I go to the clinic. I'm collaborating, I'm discussing what we can find for that middle ground. And then in terms for the IEP, I have a lot of school-based speech therapists, so I'm not like that well versed with the IEPs, but I think we, even as ABA therapists, we talk to the families and make sure that their voices are known. I've heard so many stories where they're, they go into the meeting and they have, school counselor here, principal, and it's like, and I couldn't imagine just being 1 out of 10 and I don't get a say on my own child. You know what I mean? Like, what? That's wild. So, yeah, I think it's our duties as ABA therapists, as speech therapists, to, even though we're not in the schools, like to say, hey, mom, dad, you literally have a voice and can change the goals. Like those goals don't have to be. So that's super important. I mean, the education system is forever changing. So
Always changing.
Yeah, I think they need to know. Because some parents go out of it and it's like, what just happened? Like, can I? What just happened?
That's true.
I love that, Kevin. I love that, man. Thank you for just being, again, Coop kind of said how, we appreciate just the vulnerability and you sharing here. Your work is clearly making an impact. And as a Black professional in a predominantly white field, I really want to talk about representation for a minute. Now, we're all sitting here as Black men, Black therapists. Can you talk about just being a Black man in a predominantly white field? Talk about how it's been with your journey. Has it been any systemic challenges that's been for you? And then if you want to talk about, just the need for diversity in SLPs, but just kind of talk about being a black man in a predominantly white field, how it's been for you and kind of what you've learned along the way.
First, just say, like, walking into this room, I mean, we all know it. Like, we're in the field, but I'm serious. My shoulders dropped because I was like, this is safe. This is a safe place. That can't be said for a lot of, settings that we're in when we're talking with families. Like, we as black men are always thinking like, oh, are they thinking about, my facial hair? Are they thinking about how I am with their child? Instead of like, just like what happened in the session. We always have to be on, we got to be 2 steps ahead. So as it relates to speech therapy and just like being in this field, I think I've gotten so good, and I think we all have gotten so good at just like, it's the world we live in. Even in the small world of ABA and speech therapy, it just gives a glimpse of, black men and women in the world.
Yes.
And so, I won't get into details, but I'll just say, like, obviously with the election, it was heartbreaking. Like, my family was hurting, and I can't show that, when the next day on Wednesday, I can't show that. But, it's funny when I post that, when I just say, I don't make it political, but I just post it on my stories.
I mean, you can say it, bro. You're mad Trump won.
Yeah.
It's okay.
And we're hurting. And that post, it was a story. I didn't even like call out any political side.
Yeah.
I lost hundreds of followers. And it's like, why whenever we react as black men and women, like why when we express ourselves, it's no, don't do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So again, it shows, we can put on a good face, like we always do. But whenever we express, it's like, no, go back.
Yeah. But I think to piggyback off of that, man, it's a part as black men, we have to kind of just stand on stuff. What you agree with and what you don't agree with is okay. At the end of the day, everyone has opinions, and I think that as black men, people want to take our opinions out of context. Whether whoever you voted for, there's a assumption made when it can be for a completely different reason, and we don't necessarily do that in other communities, like if you are someone else who voted for this person, oh yeah, you probably voted for him for a number of factors, but as soon as somebody in our culture does it, it's kind of like whoever that is, but I think we have to stand on that, and it is like we're always playing the gray area. We're always playing a gray area, and life is politics. But I also think that as black men, and we're playing these politics sometimes, we got to stand in that I'm a black man kind of energy,
Yeah, no, we're talking about some deep stuff right here, right now. We're talking about some of the barriers that we face, some of the challenges that we face. We're keeping it 100 here about some things that we experience, some things that we feel that we have to go through. You talked about losing followers. You talked about having to think about what somebody's thinking about you in the session when a parent's in there. They're thinking about. So I think these are, on this show, we talk about this stuff all the time. And we really appreciate you sharing that because this stuff is real. And this is beyond the science. So this is what we pride ourselves on here, especially here in the studios, of being able to talk about those things. So, man, thank you for sharing that. Sure. We could probably do a whole episode.
But for real, though, Kevin, like, you might be the first. Like, you might have a charge on you that you just don't know. Our esteemed host has started BMBA. I can see a little SLP with you where like you might be the guy who has to take this. Like, I've got to create a safe space for black male SLPs to discuss this. I'm a little older, so I'm a little more passionate about it because y'all really are, like, you're 29, man. Just to see you coming in here and just see this, it's so amazing just to see a young brother just like him who doing such amazing things.
Man, that's that representation comes in. But I will say, if you do start that group, I'm going to have to start a group called the Singing BCBA. I'd rather one up you there. All right, man. Let's lighten up the mood a little bit, and let's transition to Coops Off the Clock. If you don't know about Coops Off the Clock segment, this is where Coop
Watch
will
out now.
come ask you anything.
Watch
So
out
just
now.
be prepared for anything that he asks you. So let's go ahead. I know our listeners are waiting on this one. Let's go ahead and transition to Coop's off the clock.
I think that in life, right, everyone has that turning point moment, right? And you made a comment earlier that you weren't great with criticism, right? Yeah. What was that turning point moment for you, right, where you was maybe doing something, got criticism that you might not have agreed with, but then look back like, oh, they was right?
Early on, when I started the page, I had a couple hundred followers, and I think it was the black in me that was like, man, you have to help me out. Like, there's not a lot of black social media influencers, so I had reached out to this speech therapist. She had a pretty good number of followers, and I was like, hey, can you review my post? I just want to, it was about gestalt language processing. I was like, can you just review it? Tell me what you think. And I thought it was just going to be like, it looks good. Like, I don't care. But yeah, she went in. Ooh. She went in, and I was like, wait. I have less than 500 followers. Like, my family is amazing. People, like, they're not gonna read this. They're just gonna give it a heart. And so, she told me like what needs to be done here, what needs to be done here. Like, this isn't right. Part of me wanted to post it and just be like, man, I don't care. Like, I'm a preview wrong.
Yeah.
And so you asked that question, and I think about a couple like weeks ago. It wasn't again to like show her up, but it was like a thank you for calling me out. Cause like I want to post entertaining stuff, but I do want to have the research behind it. I don't want, people to be like, oh, he's funny, he's cool, but like, man, he told me to do this thing, and then my kid is jumping off the walls now. Like, I thought it was, so, and I also preface that in videos, like, I'm not your speech therapist, I'm not your ABA therapist, but this is what has worked for me. Take it as you may. But yeah, I think we all have that moment, and it's cool. It's not cool in the moment because you're angry. It's like, man,
ego
like,
comes
what?
in.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that was a big moment for me, educational wise. Like, I'm not bigger, I'm not better than anyone else. I want to be, like I always say, like, let's continue to learn together and grow together in my videos. That's true. Like, I'm still new to this. I want the 90-year-old speech therapist and the new grad speech therapist to be like, all right, I still have so much to learn. So let's continue to learn.
I love that. And I'm sure we all have that. I'm sure Coop has it. I'm sure Joe's. I have it, those moments where, sometimes the ego and pride, you're like, man, like, I'm going to prove someone wrong. But in hindsight, it's hindsight is 2020. You can look back and, you know what, that was a learning opportunity for me. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, wow, this is great. Kevin, you
we can talk for hours.
Yeah, we can. It's like barbershop talk, man. Like, no pun intended. So, man, you got the social media, you're cutting hairs, or you're doing impactful work. You out here, man. You doing it. I'm sure you're inspiring a lot of people. What's next? Before we wrap up here, we got to talk about what's next for you. What's next in 2025? What are you looking most forward to? But a bigger picture wise, what is next? What's the impact that you want to leave, your legacy you want to leave in this world?
When I first started the page, I think, it was to provide resources, make people smile. But, I was always praying, and I told myself, like, I want to be not only like the speech therapist, like I seriously want people to be like, hey, that's the speech therapist that I've seen all over. Not to like put myself on a pedestal, but truly like for the next person that doesn't have the resources, that doesn't have, we talk about the inner city. people that want to be doctors or, lawyers, but don't know about ABA therapy, that don't know about speech therapy. I want to be that resource where it's like, oh man, I've seen you, like you message me back, like, thank you. You know what I mean? And so that way we can facilitate, because I'm all about collaboration. I can facilitate, hey, have y'all checked out these brothers over here? Like, have you learned more about ABA therapy? Have you learned about occupational therapy? Yeah. So I think the next big thing is the haircuts. I want to continue to expand my team. I mean, it's just me right now. So I'm serious. Like, I'm the only editor. I do everything. So it's giving trust to other people and delegating, which is hard. I mean, we talk about this. We have so many things we could talk about, and I'm going to come back. But we talk about being a black man and delegating tasks. It's hard. Like, we want to be the leaders, So, yeah, I want to delegate and expand the team. And then I have some haircut cards that are coming out in the new year. So hopefully that will be in barbershops. People will learn more about sensory needs. But yeah, I'm excited for 2025.
I love
we'll
that.
collaborate. I'm telling you,
we definitely gonna collaborate. You talking about
be big.
expanding the hair? Because I mean, that's that in itself. You know how many people, particularly kids with special needs families, need that. So that's gonna be big. And me and Cooper's actually talking off air to see if you can come in and give this guy a haircut. But before you came in, he lost all his hair, so you good now.
But real talk, though, like, he's trying to be funny. We do have a BNBA conference.
Yes.
I would love for like 5 to 10 kids to come in September.
Man.
That's our first inaugural conference, and I would love, my company will sponsor it. I would love to provide haircuts for those kids.
Yeah.
Like, real talk.
Yeah, let's lock it down.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, our conference is going to be in September 4th and 5th, I believe, or 5th, whatever that weekend is, September. So we'll have to link it. We're here in Atlanta, Georgia. So you know,
I'm serious.
So, and I appreciate you offering that, Joe. Where can our listeners find you? We know we can find you, but where can our listeners find you on social? Hit us with everything. We'll put in the links, your YouTube, your Instagram, everything. Tell us where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram and TikTok, Singing SLP. And then on YouTube, Singing Speech Therapist. It's a little different, but Singing Speech Therapist. But yeah, I've just been blessed. Thank y'all for inviting me out here. I just see great things for us.
I got a present for you, man.
Uh-oh, he got a present.
You know, he kind of reminds me of Shaq.
Everybody Yo, that's the third person in the last month that said they remind you of Shaq, man.
Hey, man,
do not give him that shirt. That is for you. All right, well, he'll buy another one.
What you
Merry
got?
Christmas.
What you got?
I don't want it. They're not making the playoff.
Here
you go. Here you go.
I thought we were friends.
Let's get it out of here. I don't care about that.
My listeners, man. Listen.
Oh, go Colorado.
Georgia may have made the playoffs, but this is our first year with our coach, man. Without our coach, without Nick Saban. So can you be nice, man? Be nice. Be nice to all the people that's watching us. Be nice right now.
Yeah, they're 9-3 team, same record as Colorado, right?
Yeah, same record as Colorado.
Roll Tide. All my people watching, man. Roll Tide.
I had to go pick it up.
I appreciate you coming on the show, man. We can definitely. I feel like we could talk for a whole nother hour, man.
Yes,
we really appreciate you. Yeah. Keep up all the work that you're doing. Even when people don't tell you they're watching. You're inspiring people. You're doing big things. People come to me sometimes, you don't even know. People have come to me and say, hey, have you heard of so-and-so? So I'm like, yeah, because Cooper has told me about you. So honestly, even if people are not commenting or liking, like, people are watching the work that you're doing. So keep up the good work. If there's any way we can be of a support to help, please let us know. You know, we got to have you back on here. Some more stuff we can talk about. So thank you so much for coming on here, brother, and keep up the good work, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it, brother.
All right, for our listeners, thank you once again for just being on this journey with us. I know we've kind of gone into the conference space here. So, if you're at a conference and you would love for us to come, be a podcast partner, definitely check out Beyond the Science. We're doing big things here. Got a lot of conferences lined up for 2025. For our listeners, man, our supporters, wow. The past 5 or 6 months has been transformative. So thank you guys. We're hoping everybody has a wonderful holiday season. And we will see you guys in 2025. Thank you.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Happy
and
New
go
Year.
Dogs.
Yeah, roll tide, baby.
Whoa, you going?
Yo, that's dope.
That was dope, man. That was dope.